Annex 6 provides the structural foundation for aviation safety, codifying the administrative and operational requirements needed to manage flight risk. For those preparing for DGCA examinations, this channel provides continuous breakdowns of complex air regulations. Subscribe to stay updated on the latest regulatory deep dives. These operational procedures are derived from the standards set by the International Civil Aviation Organization. The Annex is organized into 3 branches: International Commercial Air Transport, International General Aviation, and International Operation of Helicopters. Commercial operators require an Air Operator Certificate. To secure this permit, they must demonstrate their training, flight operations, and ground handling meet established standards. Regulatory oversight is assigned to the State of Operator, defined as the location where the operator maintains its primary place of business or permanent residence. Leasing arrangements follow 2 distinct structures. Under a dry lease, the aircraft is operated under the lessee's AOC. Conversely, a wet lease places the aircraft under the lessor certificate. The aircraft remains grounded until these legal and quality control frameworks satisfy every administrative requirement. Access to the flight deck is strictly limited to the assigned crew, operating crew, authorized inspectors, or those specifically permitted by the operations manual. Even with proper credentials, an inspector can only enter if the commander determines their presence does not compromise the safety of the flight. Operators must prevent the carriage of unauthorized baggage and enforce an absolute ban on smoking in all areas of the aircraft, including the cabin and cargo holds. For passengers with reduced mobility, the regulations require advance notice and specific check-in protocols to ensure the airline can provide necessary assistance. Dispatch is only permitted once a specific set of documents is on board, starting with certificates of registration, airworthiness, and noise. Add the Air Operator Permit, crew and radio licenses, journey log, and operations manual. Finally, the minimum equipment list, maintenance release, weight and trim sheets, cargo manifests, and dangerous goods lists. This information must also be retained on the ground in fireproof containers until a duplicate record has been secured at the destination. These documents serve as the final administrative check. An error in the logs carries the same operational weight as a mechanical discrepancy. In flight, the aircraft must utilize air traffic services strictly in accordance with its filed flight plan and the requirements of the specific airspace. For long-distance flights over water or remote terrain, twin-engine aircraft operate under Extended Diversion Time Operations, or ETO. While the standard baseline is a 60-minute diversion limit, operators that demonstrate high reliability are permitted to fly 75 minutes or more from an alternate aerodrome. Between flight level 290 and 410, aircraft enter the Reduced Vertical Separation Minima environment, or RVSM. In RVSM airspace, the vertical separation between aircraft is reduced to 1,000 feet. To fly at these levels, aircraft must be equipped for automatic altitude maintenance and have an alert system that triggers if the plane deviates more than 300 feet from its assigned level. Operating at these extremes is restricted to those who can maintain the required navigation and altitude tolerances. Before takeoff, the commander must verify that weather and runway conditions meet or exceed the required operating minima. A low visibility takeoff, or LVTO, occurs when the runway visual range is less than 400 meters. These departures require DGCA approval and the use of full thrust. Scheduled operators are permitted to take off with an RVR as low as 125 meters, while non-scheduled operators are restricted to a minimum of 500 meters. For arrivals, Category 2 and 3 operations allow for a decision height below 200 feet, which must be determined by a radio altimeter. An approach cannot be commenced if the RVR is below the minima. However, if the RVR drops after the aircraft has descended below 1,000 feet, the pilot may continue the approach to the decision height. The runway is divided into 3 zones. The touchdown zone RVR is the controlling factor for the landing. The midpoint standard is 125 meters, reducible to 50 meters with specific guidance systems, while the stop end requires a minimum of 50 meters. These procedures ensure that landing and takeoff decisions are based on measurable RVR data rather than subjective visual estimates. Safety hardware scales by aircraft weight and capacity. Every plane needs weather radar and spare fuses equal to 10% or at least 3 per rating. At 5,700 kilograms, mandates include windshield wipers and, for turbojets, a ground proximity warning system. If the aircraft is authorized to carry more than 19 passengers, it must also be equipped with an airborne collision avoidance system. For aircraft over 15,000 kilograms, both a flight data recorder and a cockpit voice recorder become mandatory. These units are designed to withstand high-impact forces to ensure that flight data and cockpit audio are preserved for investigation. Data retention rules specify that FDRs must store the last 25 hours of operation, while the CVR and data link systems must retain at least the last 2 hours. The regulations dictate that as an airframe grows in size and passenger capacity, its recording and alert systems must provide more granular detail. The largest tier of requirements in Annex 6 applies to aircraft over 45,500 kilograms that carry more than 60 passengers. These aircraft must be equipped with a reinforced flight deck door designed to resist penetration from small arms fire or grenades. Beyond security, passenger volume dictates the level of medical equipment required on board. First aid kits are distributed by passenger count: 1 kit for up to 100 people, 2 for up to 199, 3 for up to 299, and 4 kits for 300 or more. These are supplemented by emergency medical kits, which are intended for use by the crew during more severe incidents. A minimum of 1 kit is required, increasing to 2 if the passenger count exceeds 250. Annex 6 scales safety requirements to the potential impact of an incident, demanding more documentation, hardware, and medical supplies as the aircraft's size increases. For more detailed breakdowns of DGCA regulations and flight safety standards, subscribe to the channel. To operate an aircraft internationally, an operator must comply with ICAO Standard 6. This regulation dictates the specific operational procedures for every flight within international commercial air transport, general aviation sectors, and helicopter operations. The DGCA enforces these procedures as a system of calculated parameters. This framework is designed to remove single points of failure by governing every stage of flight, from initial dispatch to the biological recovery of the crew. These requirements are structured into 4 specific domains: governance, airspace minima, systems and fuel, and flight duty time limitations. These 4 pillars are interlocking. They function simultaneously throughout every phase of a commercial flight. If you are preparing for the DGCA examinations, subscribe to Insight Engine for data-dense visual breakdowns of the technical curriculum. Safe operations require a precise understanding of how these variables interact. A failure in one domain often forces a cascade of secondary failures across the others. Governance begins with the Air Operator Certificate. Issuance depends on the operator demonstrating specific training policies, ground handling, and flight operation standards. The regulating authority is determined by the state of operator, defined as the place where the operator has its principal place of business or permanent residence. Operational arrangements for leasing carry strict legal distinctions. Under a dry lease, the aircraft is operated under the AOC of the lessee. In a wet lease, the aircraft operates under the permit of the lessor. Before departure, the operator must verify a suite of mandatory fire-proofed documents on board. This includes the Certificate of Registration, Certificate of Airworthiness, the Air Operation Permit, the Minimum Equipment List, and the precise weight and trim sheets. Governance also dictates cabin protocols. Smoking is prohibited in any part of the aircraft, and all escape paths must be confirmed unobstructed before taxi. Specific procedures are established for the carriage of persons with reduced mobility, as well as deportees or persons in custody. Access to the flight deck is limited to assigned crew and authorized representatives responsible for certification or inspection. However, the pilot in command holds final power to deny entry to the flight deck if the inspector's presence could endanger the aircraft. Operator governance establishes the legal and physical baseline for the aircraft. It ensures that every flight begins within a verified state of integrity. The second pillar defines the mathematical boundaries of the environment. An instrument approach cannot commence if the reported runway visual range, or visibility, is below the applicable aerodrome operating minima. If reported, the touchdown zone, midpoint, and stop-end RVR values are all controlling. The midpoint minimum is typically 125 meters, though it can be reduced to 50 meters if the aircraft is equipped with stop-end guidance. The stop-end minimum is 50 meters. Category 2 and 3 low visibility procedures require specific aircraft certification for decision heights below 200 feet. These operations demand a minimum of 2 pilots and a maintained system for recording the success or failure of the automatic landing. Takeoffs are also restricted. A low visibility takeoff is defined by an RVR of less than 400 meters. This requires DGCA approval, the use of full thrust takeoff ratings, and a complete ban on supervised takeoffs for the duration of the departure. In cruise, RVSM rules apply between flight level 290 and flight level 410. Aircraft must maintain exactly 1,000 feet of vertical separation and must use systems that alert the crew if they deviate by more than 300 feet. These visibility and altitude minima establish the exact limits where a standard approach becomes an unacceptable risk. The third pillar concerns the hardware and energy required for flight. Turbojets over 5,700 kilograms must be equipped with a ground proximity warning system. Furthermore, any aircraft over 5,000 kilograms or authorized to carry more than 19 passengers must utilize ACAS-2 for collision avoidance. For aircraft over 15,000 kilograms, the flight data recorder is a mandatory requirement. It must be capable of retaining data from at least the last 25 hours of operation. Similarly, the cockpit voice recorder and data link recorder must be capable of retaining information recorded during at least the last 2 hours of the aircraft's operation. These systems are fueled by a precise calculation. Total fuel load includes taxi, trip, and contingency fuel. Contingency is calculated as 5% of the trip fuel and must be sufficient to allow for 5 minutes of holding at 1,500 feet. Fuel requirements for isolated aerodromes are even more stringent. While reciprocating engines can use a 45-minute holding calculation, turbine engines must carry enough fuel for 2 hours of flight, which includes the final reserve. For twin-engine aircraft, EDTO rules apply if the flight path is more than 60 minutes from an alternate aerodrome. The operator must demonstrate that the aircraft can fly safely for an extended period, even if one engine becomes inoperative. Within DGCA regulations, fuel is treated as a measure of time and the probability of technical failure. When standard systems fail, physical contingencies become the final defense. First aid kits are scaled to passenger capacity, 1 kit for up to 100 passengers, 2 for up to 200, and so on. Aircraft carrying more than 250 passengers must also be equipped with 2 emergency medical kits. Oxygen requirements are based on absolute pressure. At 10,000 feet, where pressure is 700 hectopascals, supplement is required. If pressure drops to 376 hectopascals, equivalent to 25,000 feet, a critical warning alert is triggered to signal a dangerous loss of pressurization. Heavy aircraft over 5,700 kilograms require crash axes. If the passenger capacity exceeds 60, portable battery-powered megaphones are mandatory. For commercial airliners with more than 60 seats, the flight deck door must be designed to resist small arms fire and grenade shrapnel. If the aircraft must be accessed from the outside by rescue crews, the fuselage is marked with specific break-in points. These areas are color-coded in red and yellow, often outlined in white, to indicate the safest areas for emergency entry. For over-water flights, operators must provide life rafts sufficient to carry all occupants, even if the single largest raft is lost. Additionally, any aircraft carrying more than 19 passengers must be equipped with at least 2 emergency locator transmitters. These physical ratios and structural requirements serve as the final barrier against the loss of life when avionics and fuel calculations have been exhausted. The fourth pillar regulates human performance. The DGCA distinguishes between cabin crew, who perform assigned duties, and flight crew, the licensed personnel essential to operation. Their endurance is measured by the flight duty period, from report time to engine off, and flight time, from first movement to final rest. A pilot's biological clock is governed by rigid rest mandates. A local night is an 8-hour period between 2200 and 0800 hours. If a crew member crosses a time zone shift of at least 3 hours, they require 48 hours of rest before they are considered acclimatized. The most significant hazard to crew performance is the window of circadian low, or WOCL. This is the period between 0200 and 0600 hours in the time zone to which the crew is currently acclimatized. Duty limits are penalized if they overlap this window. The maximum flight duty period is reduced by 100% of its encroachment if the duty starts within the WOCL, and by 50% if the duty period ends within or fully encompasses it. The DGCA treats human fatigue as a predictable risk factor that must be mitigated through algorithmic scheduling. Endurance is monitored through cumulative limits. In any 7 consecutive days, a pilot is limited to 35 flight hours and 60 total duty hours. Limits can be extended by utilizing augmented crews. These extra crew members allow for in-flight rest. Resting in a seat provides a 2-hour extension to the duty period, while resting in a bunk provides 3 hours. In the event of unforeseen operational circumstances, such as weather or medical emergencies, the PIC may extend the flight duty period by up to 3 hours and carry out 1 additional landing. This extension carries an immediate cost. The mandatory rest period following the flight is increased pro rata by twice the amount of the extended duty time, requiring minimum 8 hours rest. Even in an emergency, pushing past standard human limits requires an immediate and mathematical payment in mandatory rest. Every variable in aviation is interlinked. Fuel requirements are dictated by weather minima. Weather minima are constrained by aircraft systems, and all 3 are bottlenecked by the duty limits of the crew. To master the DGCA exam, one must understand how these requirements interact to create a unified safety net. Subscribe